I got a question for Coach Riley.
You are Locked On Trojans, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Fight on, everyone. I'm your host, Mark Holkin, and thank you for making Locked On USC, part of the Locked On Network, your first listen every day, whether you're watching this show on YouTube, wherever you're downloading your podcast. This show is always free, and I always appreciate your support. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it. I have a competitive side, and it's a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. Who remembers when I asked Coach Riley about his team's offensive identity following that USC win, triple overtime against Arizona last year? You remember? I do. I think Coach Riley remembers. The question wasn't intended to be a gotcha moment. That wasn't where I was going with that. However, Coach Riley had an idea where the line of questioning was going, where it was coming from, because a couple weeks later, his answer changed, or at least the tone of his answer changed. After the Arizona game, the game that USC was actually fortunate to win, this is what he said, quote, "I think it might be the number one offense in the country. My expectations are higher than anybody's. I want to score every freaking time we have the ball. In reality, that's not going to happen. And you can either panic or you can get back on it. We didn't play our best tonight by any stretch, but one game to another, I wouldn't count us out just yet." End quote. Now, I'd like to remind everybody, point out that USC actually needed a failed two-point opportunity from Arizona in overtime for USC to win this game. It was from that game forward where things really started to just go completely south on USC season. The defense was already a hot mess and was only becoming a bigger and steamier pile. So despite USC putting up 40 points per game, remember, that was USC's identity. In reality, Coach Riley knew being statistically number one meant absolutely nothing. Because look, 2 weeks later, after two, terrible, demoralizing, painful losses, one on the road, and then the other one at home to Utah, Coach Riley sat alone. He was at the dais, and he started to find a little bit of humility. His answer changed from a few weeks earlier. This is what he said after two consecutive losses, the one to Notre Dame and then the one at home to Utah. "My job is to get better, just like everybody else. I've had, I think, an okay track record in calling plays, confident in my ability and our ability to do that, but we got to be better for each other." End quote. So eventually, after another 40-plus point offensive performance at home against Washington, a game USC lost, Alex Grinch was let go. Look, Coach Riley isn't going to fire himself, nor should he, and he's not going to give up his play calling duties, nor should he. But if he wants to change, if he's going to change the way the Trojans change the Trojans' identity on offense, I think he needs to go about it a different way. I think he needs to slow the game down so it can help out his own defense. Look, after USC lost that game to Utah at home, 34-32, last second field goal, the biggest question that everybody had after that game, including me, was why did he stop running the ball after the first quarter? It made no sense to anybody. USC had over 100 yards rushing at the end of the first quarter. Utah had no answer for the Trojans' run game. None. USC finished with 145 rushing yards for that game. They just stopped running the ball. Marshawn Lloyd had a 45-yard run in the first quarter. He ran the ball a total of 7 times in the game. It was confounding. Didn't make any sense. After the game, Coach Riley said, at times, we ran it well. At times, we got stuffed. I had a couple of calls that I certainly like to have back. Nothing got stuffed in the first quarter. Look, until there is more depth with USC's defensive line, there's going to be a lot of consternation with regards to USC's run defense. And that's going to affect how USC plays the game offensively. The fear, at least what people are talking about, what I'm going to talk about, is that teams in the Big Ten are going to run the ball all day long on USC's defense. Why pass the ball on USC secondary if you don't have to? Well, here's one way to fight fire with fire. This is how Lincoln Riley can flip the script. Go back to your playbook, your first quarter playbook that you were using against Utah last year. Run the ball. Run the ball, set up play action pass. But I'm not suggesting to not use your weapons on the outside. We talk about USC's wide receiver position, and for good reason. They got a really good group. But I think you need to go more pro style this year. More than what USC fans are accustomed to when they're watching Lincoln Riley call his offensive game plan. This way, you're going to keep your own defense off the field. Let them be the fresher unit at the end of the game. Then, fourth quarter, bro, go crazy. I'm serious. Run up the score. Go over the top. Have the opposing defense so focused on stopping the USC run game, play action is going to hit. All of a sudden, that deep ball down the seam, that tight end down the seam, wide open. Jacoby Lane one-on-one, Deuce Robinson one-on-one, Zachariah Branch creating space. Yeah, all that. But even if there was more confidence in the unknown going forward right now, and when I talk about the unknown, I'm talking about USC's interior defense on the defensive line. That's their biggest, most important need. I would still suggest this be USC's 2024 game plan. Even if they got the guys out of the transfer portal that they wanted. Look, it should be interesting to see what kind of identity on offense Coach Riley wants to establish in 2024. Based on who he has on offense, we know he's got a really good group of running backs. We're trying to find out if the offensive line is going to be able to repeat what they did in their Holiday Bowl performance, because those are the guys who are going to be playing. I don't know. If that happens, it's going to be interesting to see which direction Lincoln Riley wants to go. I know that they're still going to get guys out of the transfer portal, but as of right now, they don't have the necessary depth they need on the interior of the defensive line. They've got some pieces. They got some young pieces. Coach Eric Henderson, Coach Sean Nua, Antonlynn, defensive coordinator, the entire defensive staff. They're going to get that thing straightened out. However, big however, if you're going to go into the Big Ten with that old-fashioned Lincoln Riley offense and you want to score every time, like you talked about, you might not score every time. You might need to slow the game down. That's going to help out your defense. Is Lincoln Riley willing to do that? Is he capable of doing that? So, what else needs to be different in 2024? We know we need to get more players, but is Lincoln Riley ready to make that coaching adjustment, getting better? When you're hiring for your small business, you want to have as many top-tier candidates as possible to interview. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, 1 billion with a B, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses, they get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. And LinkedIn also knows that small businesses are wearing a lot of hats, and you might not have a lot of time or resources to hire. Thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, quick, and easy. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Do you have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The spring transfer window is the perfect example of why I do not like to use the words expect or expectation. I've explained it to you before. Look, we were all anticipating a bunch of player movement in both directions out of leaving USC and coming to USC, and for a few reasons. Because all of those defensive players who wanted, who originally maybe wanted to consider USC, they now had all those roadblocks removed. Alex Grinch wasn't a part of the program anymore. USC hired Antonlynn. He hired his defensive staff, completely assembled. Matt Entz, Doug Belk. Everything was coming together, right? They got some new pieces in the early signing period in December. Things were looking good. Everything was trending up for USC. The narrative was, whoa, USC made the moves they needed to make during the offseason to prove that, yeah, defense is Lincoln Riley's priority number one going forward. So, as I mentioned, coaching staff was in place early January. By January, defensive staff was in place. And when Antonlynn came over, he brought a couple of guys with him, 2 DBs, Kamari Ramsey, John Humphrey. USC also brought in another defensive back, a couple more defensive backs, actually. Achille Arnold, DeCarlos Nicholson, and then Greedy Vance. Greedy came along in the spring transfer window. At linebacker, Matt Entz brought in Easton Mascarenas Arnold. So again, Greedy Vance, spring transfer window. Every other one of the defensive transfers that have happened so far came in December, including 2 defensive line guys that came in early. One of those guys left early, Isaiah Rakes. The other one, Nate Clifton, he's still a part of USC's roster. So what in the hell happened between January, USC spring camp in April, and the spring window opening? Again, remember, we were all excited for the upcoming spring transfer portal window. It didn't matter that 1 or 2 defensive line guys left USC. Who cares, right? Because according to Lincoln Riley, for everyone that leaves, there'd be 100 ready to take their place. Well, no one told those hundreds of players out there, because I don't think anybody anticipated USC's D-line help, because that's what they're down to, coming from programs named Grand Valley State or Stephen F. Austin. Yeah. People were thinking, yeah, USC's defensive line help is coming from Michigan State, Texas Christian University, Louisville, Power 5 programs. Well, that doesn't appear to be the case right now. What is the case is this is where USC's at. Like I said, plans A, B, C, D, E, they've all gone somewhere else. So I mentioned this name last week on Locked On USC. From Grand Valley State, JVR Suggs. I mentioned that he was going to take a visit to USC. Well, he did. over the weekend. Just to remind everybody, he spent his first 5 years playing Division II football. Okay, JVR now is going to try his hand playing Division I football. He still has 2 years of eligibility left as well. So I'm good with that part of it. You know my feelings on 1-year rentals. It's the nature of the beast. You got to do it. But I would prefer guys you can bring in for multiple seasons. So as I mentioned, USC hosted Suggs over the weekend. And before that, he was actually in Tallahassee. So he's visited Florida State's program. And after he left USC, he was going to go visit Michigan. Yeah. 6'3", 282 pounds roughly. I don't know. We'll see what happens. He's collecting offers left and right. So apparently there's some upside there. A lot of big time programs like what they see. When I spoke about him on last week's episode, I mentioned that he's from the state of Michigan. Well, Grand Valley State is in Michigan, and now the Wolverines have offered. So we're going to see. Is Coach Eric Henderson's dog work grind going to be enough to get him to leave the state of Michigan? Is it time to cut that umbilical cord? We hope that's the case because USC needs players right now. Here's another name from Stephen F. Austin University. Brandon Lane, 6'4", 300 pounds. Now, he took a visit to East Lansing. He was going to go hanging out with the Spartans. Well, before the defensive tackle played for Stephen F. Austin last year, he started his career at South Dakota State. He's no longer a pledge to Sparty. Okay. He's looking at USC. So is Kentucky. Kentucky's looking at Brandon Lane. We'll see what happens there. He hasn't taken a visit to USC yet. Not usually a good sign. He said he's working on it. We'll see what happens. So yes, the biggest, most immediate need by far, according to Coach Lincoln Riley, is getting some interior defensive line help. Hopefully, USC can get one, maybe both of those guys. Their other immediate need, offensive tackle. Here's somebody. Look, Texas A&M offensive lineman Bryce Foster, 6'5", 330 pounds. You like the size, right? SEC. He was a starting center for A&M. In fact, he was the starting center these past 3 years. And he started all 12 games as a freshman back in 2021. And that helped him earn All-American honors. Okay. Well, he started the first 4 games in 2022 at center, got hurt. And then he started all 12 games last year, and he missed 1 game with an injury. He was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school, and he was considered the number 2 interior offensive lineman in the class of 2021, according to On3. Now, let me give you my commentary here. The only way I see this happening is if Jonah Monheim signs off on it and says, okay, I'll move back to tackle. Now, I've been wrong before, and I will be again, but there's no way this is happening. Jonah did not come back to play offensive tackle. If I was him, I'd say, you know what? I'm going to pull a bear. I'm going to renegotiate my NIL. So again, I don't see that happening. It just doesn't make sense. This one does make sense. Liberty University. He's listed as an interior offensive lineman, but he's very versatile. He can play inside, but he can also play tackle. His name's Chase Mitchell, 6'4", 330 pounds. He visited USC. And he also, when he jumped into the transfer portal, he asked to have the no contact tag label associated with it. I told you on an episode of Locked on USC last week, that means he has his group of finalists taken care of. He doesn't want any more on his plate. Let him. He just wants to figure it out among the 3, 4, 5, however many teams he's been in contact with. As I mentioned, he took a visit to USC over the weekend. He's a grad transfer. He's going to be a one-year player. The reason why this makes sense in his career at Liberty, he's appeared in 31 total games. He started at left tackle last season, okay, and he's also started playing. He's also started playing on the interior of the offensive line. So again, versatile. He can move inside or outside. That's what USC needs right now. The perfect type of depth piece you want. Someone who can play inside, someone who can play outside, and again, he's a veteran with a lot of experience. That's what USC lacks on the outside right now. You got Elijah Page behind him. You got true freshman Justin Ta'uinu on the right side. You got Mason Murphy, who's got experience behind him. You got Tobias Raymond, who doesn't have experience. This is the type of guy you need to bring in. So we'll see what happens. I'm not sure if he took a visit or not, but there's another defensive line player. His name is Tyler Barron from Louisville. He's an edge. Again, just my opinion, edge is in an area where USC needs help on the defensive line. I just say, let's focus on our biggest, most important needs. I'm not the coach. They know way more and way better than I do. But we know nobody else is leaving USC. We know what their roster is going to look like. I mean, somebody could leave, theoretically. They would have to sit out once they got a waiver. But I think with what's on USC's defensive line right now, you got a couple of young guys showing up. You got a couple of young guys showing up on the offensive line as well. Makai Saina and Hayden Trader. That's what you got to work with. So, yeah, what's left for the coaching staff to buy on the shelf? This is why they're kind of looking around saying, all right, well, this is what's available. You hear my voice all the time. I tell you all the time, I'm a competitive person. And the more you listen, the more you watch, the more you're going to agree. Well, that competitive side has become a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you play not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations. And you can build up amazing cities. And they're going to they can bring you big time money. But the best part, my favorite part, I like messing around with my friends. You can too. You own the properties, they're renting or leasing from you. Walk inside, take money out of their vault. So it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You too can team up with friends and people all around the world in timed tournaments, and you can earn huge rewards. So get in the game, join your friends, download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. Question. Where's your money going? We're going to talk about some overrated teams that's on USC's schedule. I'm not agreeing with some of these early lines that are being set. Where's your money going? Forget team loyalty. We're talking about rent payments. We're talking about making your mortgage payment. Talking about putting food on the table. Putting shoes on little Tommy Trojan, on little Tanya Trojan's feet. Well, there's been some betting lines set on some USC games for next year. Someone actually made a comment on one of last week's episodes. I'm like, really? There's already lines for USC games? Apparently they are. DraftKings. They set USC's win total for their first Big Ten regular season schedule at just under 7. What does that mean? I always laugh out loud at those things. Just say they're going to win 6 games or they're going to win 7. Just under makes no sense. Stop it. Anyways, they went ahead and they've set 6 betting lines for games. So I guess this is what they're calling or how I'm going to describe it. Get in now before you even know who's available to play, right? Who's injured, who's on the roster, whatever. Bet now. So let's go over these 6 games. USC versus LSU. LSU is favored by 6 points. I've talked ad nauseum on the show. Okay, both programs will be replacing Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks, and the quarterbacks that are going to be playing in this game, Miller Moss for USC, Garrett Nussmeier for LSU, they both won their respective bowl games. You know what else? Both teams have new defensive staffs. I understand why LSU is the favorite, but by a touchdown, I got to be honest with you. I think LSU is going to be mid in 2024. Yeah, middle of the road. This next game really caught my attention. USC at Michigan, -12. Yeah, Michigan. Home favorite, 12 points. USC on the road, dog. Look, yeah, they're the defending national champions. But, however, Michigan lost its head coach, their defensive coordinator, all those players to the NFL draft. They have 13 players drafted. Look, I'm telling you right now, if you want some easy money, go bet on USC to cover that spread. One, because that line is going to go down and not up, unless injuries or something really weird happens around USC before that game happens. Number 2, the Wolverines will have played Texas a couple weeks earlier, and USC will have already played LSU. So I think everyone's going to have a better idea of what both teams look like. But I got to be honest, that point spread really pissed me off because the perception of USC's program right now, they're mid. At least the guys who are setting that betting line. USC is actually favored at home to open the season in the Big Ten Conference against Wisconsin by only 4.5 points there. Again, at least they're favored over Wisconsin. USC's first conference home game. Look, I don't want a Utah type of offense. Wisconsin, that's what I'm describing, with Alex Grinch on the other side of the ball, co-defensive coordinator. I don't want to see them winning this game. I'm surprised USC is only a 4.5 point favorite. Interesting. Apparently, there's not a lot of confidence in Lincoln Riley's offense this year. At home. Here's another one that USC is a home dog by 5 points. Penn State. Now, Penn State is returning their starting quarterback, Drew Allar. They were returning a couple of really solid running backs. But here's the other thing to take into consideration. You've got Penn State returning, well, not returning. They're bringing in 2 new coordinators, offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. Tom Allen, former Indiana head coach, is going to take over the defense. And Kansas's former offensive coordinator, Andy Kotelnicki, he's shown up. He spent the last 3 years at Kansas. Okay. The Big 12 isn't known for their defense. So take Kansas's offensive numbers with a grain of salt. Not saying they weren't good. They have been a program on the rise. Just saying. I'm sorry. Look, by the time this game is played at the Coliseum, I think everyone's going to agree with me. Drew Allar is he's a mid-level college quarterback. He's not good. And I don't know if Penn State's run game is going to be able to generate enough offense to beat USC. Let me get through these next 2 games real quick. USC at home, well, on the road, -4. Okay. I'll accept this line, although I think USC should be favored by a little bit more. UCLA is breaking in a brand new rookie breaking in a rookie head coach, Deshaun Foster. Why is USC only a 4.5 point favorite? Technically, it is a road game. It's at the Rose Bowl. However, look, I think the Bruins are actually more void of talent than USC. even with Jay Toya deciding to stay in Westwood. I don't know. Maybe it's because UCLA has won 2 of the last 3. And Lincoln Riley is just 1-1 against UCLA. And then includes last year's ugly loss at home. That was the game where, I don't know, at least it felt like to me, all the guys didn't put forth their best effort. Just my opinion. Kind of felt that way. Look, if USC that showed up against Louisville had showed up against UCLA, USC is playing in a different bowl game. And more than likely, they're finishing with 9 wins, which is a lot better than 8-5. I'll take 9-4. Here's the other game that USC is a home dog. Last game of the season, Notre Dame, 3.5 points. Here's why. The Notre Dame has won 5 out of the last 6 games that they play against USC. That sucks. Always sucks losing to Notre Dame. However, USC won the last time the game was in LA. Caleb had his Heisman moment. He went off in that game. It was beautiful. You know what else is going to happen this year? Either Miller Moss or Zachariah Branch is going to have their Heisman moment in this game. So write this down right now. Full homer alert. USC is going to blow out the Irish. There is no way Miller and the USC offense is going to turn it over 5 times or whatever that number was on the road last year in South Bend. Look, I know Caleb had his worst game ever near Chicago. That's where he's going. But I don't see USC having a repeat performance of that game at home. So, yeah, if you're going to bet on USC, jump on those lines now while it's early, because those lines are screaming, put your money on USC to cover every single one of those. All right, that's it. This episode's over. Did you enjoy it? Did you like it? I did. I had a good time. If you did, you're watching on YouTube, become a subscriber. Smash that thumbs up. Hit that bell notification button. That way you do not miss an episode of Locked on UFC 5 times a week. I'll be back with another episode tomorrow. When you're done making Locked on UFC your first listen every day, get on over to wearesc.com. Spend $1. Figure it out. You're going to want to do it. Until then, everyone, you know what to do.